Today you find me in Coatbridge, and we're going to be doing something very different today. As right behind me is a museum, and that museum is Summerlee Museum of Scottish Industrial Life, and we're going to go in there because I'm going to be looking at some trains. They've got some locomotives on display, and they've also got interesting multiple units as well. So I'm going to go inside now and let's have a look at all these locomotives and units on display. As we're entering the museum, let's give a quick background of the site before we see the trains. The museum is on the site of the Victorian Summerlee Ironworks, which opened in 1836 and was an early adopter of the hot blast process. But the site closed in the early 1930s during the Great Depression. A demolition took place during the 1950s during the construction of the Hydrocon crane factory. As the main Hydrocon crane factory became the museum building, which the museum opened in 1988. So the first thing we're going to do is go into that building right behind me there. This building dates from 1859, but it does have one steam locomotive in that building. The building we are entering dates from 1859, has the gift shop in, but we're going straight through the gift shop to the other building, as that building is the Hydrocon crane factory. Inside the Hydrocon crane factory there's wonderful exhibits, but as I mentioned, we're here to see the locomotives. And this one is a saddle tank number 11, built by Gibbs and Hoggs in Airdrie in 1898. This locomotive worked for the Fife Coal Company and then later the National Coal Board, but this locomotive is the only surviving locomotive in preservation built by Gibbs and Hogg. Now that small industrial locomotive is impressive, but the rest of the locomotives and multiple units are actually outside the building, so going to take a look at them right now. We are now passing through the gift shop again and leaving the building, but as we leave the building, we turn right and we notice two steam cranes that are exhibited outside next to the building. These two steam cranes are built by Marshall, Fleming and Jack of Motherwell. The first one dates from 1900 and was used for Coatbridge Limited for their Lanarkshire steelworks and stayed there till the 1970s when it was rescued, minus the boiler. The other one dates from 1944 as the firm moved from steam to electricity powered, possibly making this the last steam crane built in Scotland, and this one lasted till 1986. And not far from the steam cranes is this beast of a locomotive. This next locomotive is massive, but it's a GMA class number 4112 Springbok, a 482-284 Garrett built by the North British Locomotive Company in 1958 under the subcontract of Bayer Peacock in Manchester. This locomotive worked the 3-foot 6-inch gauge South African Railway and came back to Scotland in 1988. The locomotive is owned by the North Lanarkshire County Council. It's now time to leave the Garrett as we start heading towards the tram tracks and start walking on the tram tracks, as this will take us to the rest of the rolling stock on display around the site. Sadly, the trams were not running on the day I went, as there are problems with the system, but would be lovely to travel this short line by tram, but walking is also good. And we get to this bridge. As we're going over the bridge, we can see the Monkland Canal below. Built by James Watts in 1770, it was used to bring coal to Glasgow, but the canal closed in 1942 after the London, Midland and Scottish Railway applied to the Ministry of War Transport to abandon the canal, which passed in 1952. But as we carry on walking, we can see that the museum recreated a mine area, which is the next location that I want to visit. So right behind me here is the entrance to the mine, and we're going to have a look in there now because there is 3 locomotives on display in this mine area. We are now walking into the mine as it's a lovely recreation, and it even has some old mine wagons which looks like they were dumped here when a mine closed. But the reason I'm in the mine area is to see the final 3 locomotives that are in this area and sitting next door to a small platform. But sadly the platform isn't accessible as they ask you not to climb over the fence. This next locomotive is a Hudswell Clark 060 tank locomotive and was built in 1909. The locomotive also worked for the Fife Coal Company and then later the National Coal Board. So this next locomotive has a works number 9628 named Robin. It's an 040 VBGT locomotive built by Sentinel and was built in 1957 for R.B. Tellens in Riffleet Foundry in Coatbridge. The foundry closed in 1995 and the locomotive is waiting restoration. Our final locomotive is this Andrew Barclay diesel locomotive 040DH number 5. It was built in 1961 in the Caledonian Works in Kilmarnock. The locomotive has been around the country, including Singer Manufacturing Kilbury and Clydebank, the Crane Company in Ipswich, and Norbit Pickering Limited in Wishaw. Before we leave the recreated mine, there is Miners Row, which show houses dated from the 1800s to the 1980s. But in the words of the Tim Traveller, we're not here to see any of that. So we're now leaving the mine reconstruction and start following the tram tracks to the final thing that I want to show you in this video. And we're heading towards it. Towards the end of the tram line there is a blue train that is coming into view. And that blue train is quite interesting as it's electric multiple unit. And this is the Class 311. And this is the real reason why we're visiting the museum to see this. This Class 311, which is sadly under a lot of tarp, looks like the Class 303 Glasgow Blue train. But those were built in Scotland by the Press Steel Company. The Class 311s were built by Cravens in Sheffield, as the Press Steel Company were no longer building trains. The Class 311s were built between 1959 and 1961 for services to Gourock and Wemyss Bay. Only 19 units were built. These units were withdrawn in 1990 when the Class 320s were introduced, but 2 units were kept for Sandite trains and renumbered as Class 936s. These were 311103 and 311104. These 2 units lasted until 1999 and were stored hoping they would be preserved. This unit is 311103 as only 2 of the 3 coaches made it into preservation and is going under a lengthy restoration. So I have really enjoyed my time here at the Summerlee Museum of Scottish Industrial Life, and there's some wonderful locomotives and multiple units on display. The only thing that I didn't see was the trams. They do have trams running, but unfortunately there's an issue with them at the moment and the trams are not running. But other than that, it's a really enjoyable experience at this museum, and also it's free. You can also get the train from Coatbridge Central, which is a short walk from that railway station, but it's only got an hourly service from that railway station. Unlike Coatbridge Sunnyside, which is a bit of a longer walk, but it does have more frequent services stopping at that station. So hopefully you enjoyed this little bonus video, because I sure enjoyed looking at this museum. I know a video is popping up on screen right now. Feel free to give that a click. The people on screen now, YouTube channel members and Patreon supporters, thank you for supporting the channel. I've been simOnTrains and hope to see you at the next railway station so we can embark on a new journey together. Thanks for watching.